I have been screaming her name for 2 hours. Elena. 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 I have screamed it in every room, every hallway, against every wall of this house that breathes with me and that I no longer know whether it breathes because I breathe or whether I breathe because it allows me to. She doesn't answer. She hasn't answered since I broke the mirror. Since I saw my Barcelona flat rebuilt inside these walls. Since I found that photograph from 1953 with my face and my handwriting on the back. This time I'll remember. Those were the words. My handwriting. My promise. From 73 years ago. And now Elena has gone silent. And the silence of this house is worse than anything the manuscript ever said. Because the manuscript lies by excess. It tells you too much. Silence lies by omission. It leaves you alone with what you already know and refuse to admit. I searched for her the way you search for someone you know you're not going to find. Methodically. Room by room. Floor by floor. Knocking on the walls with my knuckles the way a doctor auscultates a sick body, hoping the sound would change, that something would ring hollow, that a crack in the stone would let her voice escape. Nothing. The kitchen was cold. The sitting room was still draped in white sheets, but now the kneeling shapes beneath them looked like something else. They weren't praying. They were saying goodbye. The hallway in the east wing smelled of ink and damp dust, and the drag marks on the floor, those worn paths running from the library to the door, from the door to the library, like a pendulum that cannot stop, seemed deeper than before. As if the house had recently swallowed something heavy. As if it were digesting. I climbed to the second floor. Arnaud's bedroom was exactly as it had been, the unmade bed bearing the impression of a body, the covered mirror, the clock frozen at 3:03. But when I passed the clock, something changed. Not in the clock. In me. I felt a pang in my chest, not pain, something older than pain, something that existed before I did, and my fingers moved on their own toward the glass face. They caressed it. With familiarity. With tenderness. The way you caress the face of someone sleeping. I pulled my hand away. My grey hand. The stone had reached my shoulder during the night and now covered half my torso. I could feel it beneath my clothes like armor growing from the inside. It didn't hurt. That was the most terrifying part. It didn't hurt at all. It felt like coming home. I kept searching. Elena was not in the walls. She was not in the air. She was not at 3:03 in the morning, because 3:03 had passed hours ago and the only thing I had heard was my own breathing and its echo in the stone. And then I found her. But not where I expected. There was a portrait I had not uncovered. In the hidden study, behind the bookshelf, hanging on the wall farthest from the door, covered by a cloth that was not black like the others but a dark blue, almost purple, like the sky just before the last stars disappear. I don't know why I hadn't seen it before. I had been in that room dozens of times. I had uncovered the other portraits, Sebastian, Catalina, Joaquin, the nameless man, Arnaud, and studied them with the morbid fascination of someone searching for answers in faces that cannot speak. But this portrait had remained invisible. As if the house had hidden it. As if it didn't want me to see it. Or as if it had been waiting for the exact right moment. I pulled away the cloth. And I saw myself. No. Not exactly. I saw myself the way you see yourself in a dream, the features slightly different, the jaw a little softer, the hair longer. But the eyes. The eyes were mine. Not similar. Identical. The same shade of hazel flecked with grey, always grey, grey in everything, and the same way of looking out from the canvas as though looking through a window that opens onto nowhere. It was a woman, dressed in clothes from the 1980s. Her hair gathered carelessly. An expression that was neither sadness nor fear but something more complex, more devastating, the resignation of someone who has tried something too many times and knows she is going to try once more. And on her right hand, a ring. Small. Silver. With a tiny blue stone I knew better than my own name. Because that ring was on my finger. I was wearing it at that very moment. I had worn it my entire life. My mother's ring, I had always thought. The ring she gave me before she died, which I never took off because removing it would have been like tearing out a bone. But the portrait was dated 1987. And the woman wearing it was not my mother. It was Elena. And it was me. I sat on the floor. I didn't fall. I didn't collapse. I sat with the obscene calm of someone who has received a terminal diagnosis and discovers that a part of him already knew. The body sits before the mind processes. The body always knows first. Elena had told me, before she went silent, where to look. Underneath, she had whispered one night, her voice so faint it sounded like rain on a distant roof. Underneath where they walk. Underneath where they have always walked. The floorboards of the hidden study. The ones that creaked when you stepped on them. The ones that formed part of the drag path, that obsessive route between the library and the door. I drove my fingers, grey fingers, stone fingers that could barely feel temperature anymore but that possessed a strength that was not mine, into the joints and pulled. The wood gave way with a groan. And beneath it, in a hollow that smelled of centuries, I found the torn pages. They had not been torn from the main manuscript. They were from other manuscripts. From the ones I had found in the study, the ones with different names on the cover. Someone, Elena, always Elena, had torn them from each cycle and hidden them here. The way you save the most important pages of a diary. The way you tear the evidence from a crime so someone will find it when it's too late for the criminal but not for the truth. I read them with trembling hands. Not trembling from fear. From recognition. Sebastian, 1823. 11 days. His manuscript was long, detailed, poetic. It described the house as a palace of shadow and mystery. He heard a woman's voice that warned him. He didn't listen. On the 11th day, his skin began to harden. On the 12th, there was no 12th. The manuscript ended mid-sentence, like a heart stopping between one beat and the next. Catalina, 1867. 8 days. Her manuscript was shorter, more urgent. Fewer flourishes. More desperation. She was the one who first tore out the pages. She understood the manuscript was a trap before anyone else. But not in time. Never in time. Her final entry, the voice told me to run. But my feet know this house better than I do. And they don't want to leave. Joaquin, 1912. For days. His manuscript was brief and repetitive. The same sentences appeared 2, 3 times, as though the house had forgotten it had already written them. As though the mechanism generating these stories was breaking down. A clock shedding its parts. Joaquin didn't even have time to be frightened. His final entry, I think I have always lived here. And the last one. 1953, no name. 3 days. Barely a paragraph. The handwriting was clumsy, childlike, as though whoever was writing had forgotten how letters are formed. It said, "There is a house. There is a man. There is a letter. The man arrives. The man reads. The man stays. The house breathes. Repeat. That was all. An algorithm. A mechanical instruction written by something that had almost forgotten what it meant to be human. The difference between Sebastian's manuscript, lyrical, passionate, terrified and beautiful, and this paragraph was the difference between a love poem and a grocery list. The same intention, but hollowed out. Eroded. Like a beach that has lost all its sand and only the bare rock remains. The cycles were accelerating. 11 days. 8. 4. 3. And degrading. Each iteration poorer, more mechanical, more hollow. The house was not growing stronger. It was losing everything that made it function. It was dying. It had been dying for 200 years, and each cycle was a fainter heartbeat in a heart that did not know how to stop. I understood it sitting on the floor, surrounded by pages that smelled of dead time, with half my body turned to stone and the portrait of a woman with my eyes watching me from the wall. Elena was not a trapped wife. Elena was not a ghost. Elena was not a separate person imprisoned within the house's walls, fighting to free herself. Elena was the house. Or more precisely, Elena was the part of the house that did not want to be a house. Our Nonno had fragmented. When his consciousness dissolved into the stone, it did not dissolve uniformly. The part that loved life, that feared death, that clung to existence with a drowning man's desperation, that part became the house. The breathing walls. The trapping manuscript. The machinery of the cycle. But the part that loved others. The part capable of sacrifice, of surrender, of letting go of someone beloved so they might walk away free. That part refused to dissolve completely. It clung to the last thing our Nonno remembered before he stopped being human, the name of the woman he had lost. Elena. His mother. His wife. The name that held everything it meant to love someone more than yourself. And that part, that fragment of consciousness growing smaller and more diffuse with every cycle, closer and closer to nothing, had spent 200 years trying to do what our Nonno never could, let go. Every time the house sent a letter. Every time a new name arrived in the valley. Every time the cycle began again. Elena was there. Whispering. Warning. Pleading. Don't finish reading. Please. With less voice each time. With less memory. With less of everything. And every time she failed. And every time she lost a little more of herself. And she kept trying. That was not courage. It was something larger than courage. It was love in its purest and most terrible form, love that knows it is going to lose and chooses to try anyway. And I had found her in a portrait with my face. Then the memories came. Not like in chapter 4. Not as a 3-second flash I could chalk up to suggestion or exhaustion. They came like a flood. Like a river breaking through a dam. Like something that had been pressing against a door for decades and the door had finally given way. I remembered things I had not lived. Cooking a paella in a kitchen that doesn't exist but that I recognized as this house's kitchen before the renovation. Humming a song I don't know but my lips form effortlessly, a melody from the 70s that our Nonno used to listen to while he wrote. Reaching for a doorknob that isn't where my fingers expected, because the bedroom door was moved in 1912. I remembered the smell of turpentine. The weight of the brush. The texture of canvas beneath my fingers as I painted the portrait of a woman who no longer existed, trying to capture a face that blurred a little more with each passing day. And I remembered the letter. Not the letter I received. The letter I wrote. I remembered the pressure of the pen on the paper. The black ink flowing with a perfect viscosity. The calligraphy that was not mine but that my fingers executed with the certainty of someone who has written the same words 1,000 times. Dear Sir. No. Again. Dear Mr. Valls. And the cold, mechanical satisfaction of sealing the envelope, knowing it would arrive at the precise moment. When there was no one left. When the loneliness ran deep enough that the house would seem like salvation. I wrote the letter to myself. I lured myself here. I was the bait and the prey. The hunter and the animal. The trap and the finger that sets it. I am Arnor now. No. Arnor now is what remains when they strip away everything I believe myself to be. Arnor now is the stone beneath the skin. The grey beneath the color. The house beneath the life. I looked at Elena's portrait. She looked back at me with my own eyes. And for the first time in this nightmare, I did not feel fear. I felt grief. A grief so ancient and so vast it could not fit inside a single human body. A grief that needed an entire house to contain it. I am sitting at the desk in the hidden study. The pen is before me. The paper is blank. My right hand is entirely grey, stone from the fingers to the shoulder, spreading across my chest like the roots of a tree growing inward, and when I move it, it sounds. A mineral whisper. Stone against stone. But it still moves. It still obeys. Without thinking, without deciding, without wanting to, without the intervention of the part of me that still calls itself Hugo, I pick up the pen. I hold it the way you hold something sacred. The way you hold something dangerous. The ink touches the paper. And I write. Not a letter. Not a sentence from the manuscript. A name. A single word in perfect calligraphy. Calligraphy I never learned. Calligraphy my fingers have known since before I was born. Since before Hugo Valls was even an idea in the mind of a dying house. And I recognize the name. It is my own. The next chapter will be released when there are 50 of us. 50 people who know the truth about this house. About what I am. About what I have always been. Subscribe. Because what comes next is the last page. And someone has to read it. Someone has to know how it ends.